Welcome to Real Time Recorder, everybody. I'm Zeus Caravella from ZK Research, and I'm here again with my compatriot Dave Michaels. Dave, how you been this week?
I'm doing good. Good week.
Yeah. We had a couple of big things this week, right? We had Worldwide Developer Conference from Apple. We had Cisco's Webex event. So why don't we start with the Cisco event, since that's most, I think it's the most interesting to our audience, anyways. And this was it wasn't really it was an event put on by the Webex team, but it was really a hybrid work event. And I guess from a timing perspective, it makes sense. We have pretty good vaccination numbers in the U.S. and more and more companies I talk to are planning to go back to work. So when they do, we'll be in this hybrid mode for a long time. I think one of the data points they had pointed out at the event, and then also a little while ago, is that moving forward, 98% of meetings will include one virtual participant. So, there's the WebEx tie-in to it. They had a lot of announcements at the event.
And it's not going to be just me anymore. It's going to be other people too.
Yeah. They had a lot of announcements at the event. And I don't know how much you want to get into the individual product announcements, but obviously there was a couple of key changes. One of them was a new pricing model, right? I think historically, being generous to Cisco, I think Cisco pricing was confusing at best, right? They had so many different ways to buy their products. And now they've gone down to one flat license in which you get calling, meeting, polling, messaging, and I think there was one other component. And so they've taken all the WebEx things and they put it into one license. And the price that Java Khan, the GM, gave us was about $10 per month. But he made sure that I caveated that with the appropriate enterprise licensing and channel discounts. So I think from a Cisco perspective, the pricing is important because there's a lot of customers I've talked to that have this 2019 view of WebEx where the product isn't what it is today, or wasn't what it is today. And so one of Cisco's big challenges is getting customers to try WebEx again. And so if the price is too expensive, then of course they may not try it again. So at least in this case, at $10 per user per month, price is certainly no longer a factor, and you get everything that's in the WebEx suite. And the other big change was really the brand change, right? Gone is that the ball that we've seen since they bought the company in 2007. There's been different variations of the ball, but it was still a ball. In fact, that's where the phrase "pass," I'm going to pass you the ball came from, and that's been replaced by this kind of cool
double helix
Aruna, double helix. That's right. And Aruna, their CMO, when she talked about it, said it was two rotating helixes that make it W, which also indicates two hands that come together.
Yes, it's obviously
gives the interest of co-working. Yeah. That was hard to see until you looked at it, I guess. But I will say, from a marketing standpoint, Aruna's done a fantastic job changing the image of the company, right? They've got some great corporate sponsors. The PGA Tour of Australia is one of them. They highlighted McLaren. And what I liked about the McLaren video, Dave, was it actually used a lot of the features in a way that made sense. Like, for instance, the noise block capability. They had a person on the track trying to talk to somebody, and he turned on noise block. I remember when Poly first introduced their noise block, I said the use case you gave was two people shaking maracas in the background. That's not a realistic use case. Right?
That happens to me all the time.
That never happens.
You're not being fair. That happens to me all the time.
Yeah. And the example I gave, I said, why don't you have somebody on a runway talking about a part, right? That to me would be more meaningful. That's kind of what Cisco did. And so I thought overall it was a nice event. I liked the tie-in to inclusivity, which I'll talk to a little bit. But I did think the new colors, the refreshed brand, this was long overdue for Cisco. They've been running with that ball for a long time. And if they want to shed the image that the stodgy old WebEx, it starts with the brand, and I think hopefully customers will look at it because it is quite a bit of a different product.
Well, I think it was a great event and a great post, by the way, on No Jitter you did about the event. I was there, and I still picked up some things out of your post, so that was great. I've said this a couple of times that Zoom won the pandemic, right? And it won just an explosive growth. Won the pandemic. Microsoft did really well. Once you get past Zoom and Microsoft, it's hard to say who came in third because so many companies grew so much that double-digit growth wasn't even enough to maintain market share, as Synergy pointed out. So Cisco, of course, saw a big pop, just like a lot of other companies. But it didn't win. It didn't win the pandemic it was kind of still in its, I don't know what to call it, AI sabbatical, some seem reasonable. And it's also having a mass exodus going on with some leadership changes. Chuck let those things go on too long. But right around the beginning of the pandemic is when we started seeing some pretty significant changes out of that group. And they've been innovating at a very rapid pace. And so now, okay, pandemic's kind of behind us, as you pointed out. So now Cisco is out to win the new hybrid office. A whole new game is afoot. And they're pulling out all the stops. I mean, and so you've hit on a number of them, but they've got the new hardware, and they've had they've been introducing hardware along the way. We've talked about the Desk Pro, we've talked about the Desk Hub in the past, ideal for a hybrid office setup or even a home office. But now they're like really slashing the prices on these, so you're getting integrated, made for purpose hardware that is at a very reasonable price. You've talked about the bundle, meetings, voice, messaging, polling, events, aggressively priced suite, very aggressive. So they're really pulling out the stops there. They've made 3 acquisitions recently. We've talked about them all individually, but 3 acquisitions integrating into the product. They did a complete sales team reorg. They realigned their go-to-market. We talked about AT&T now selling Webex calling. That's a new twist, and we're going to see more of that. They said something like they said 800 features. I want a list. I want to see that. But 800 new features. They've really been introducing a lot of capability, lots of security. That NSA report, I actually featured it in the Insider report. I think that was a month ago. But the NSA published a report saying, hey, I know you're working at home, government employees. You should be careful what platforms you use. And they recognize Cisco Webex as a very secure platform. And then you just touched on the new marketing. McLaurin F1 racing team, and they got the new logo. So Cisco's really going aggressively after this new hybrid office. We're going to be hearing a lot about the hybrid office from lots of different companies, and but I think Cisco is really going to be a force in this new race.
Yeah, it's hard for me to condemn sort of their lack of attention to WebEx before the pandemic, because in some ways you're saying they weren't ready for the pandemic when the pandemic happened. And who knows, if the pandemic hadn't happened, what would Zoom be today? I don't think they'd be the company they are today. That's for sure. So they did get caught, and they sort of admitted, right? Mea culpa, that they did lack a lot of the features that the competitors had. They caught up with those, but in some ways you couldn't have built them in preparation for something you didn't know was coming. So that was a bit tough. I will say one of the nice things they've done, though, is they've tied their message now to every product they have to inclusivity. And there's a lot of things that WebEx does that when you think about it, makes it easier for everybody to use. Even just the basic gesturing capabilities where you can raise your hand and the virtual hand comes up, right? Not everybody's technically savvy enough to use it. The translation capabilities lets people join in that speak different languages. Even some of the features they have, that Snora demoed, where you could sit down at a Desk Pro with Cisco headset on and automatically pair you, right? So inclusivity is more than just, including people in, poor social situations and things like that. It's making sure everybody can collaborate equally together. And so I thought they did a nice job of tying that together. I did like the Ariana Huffington piece as well, where she talked about the fatigue people get from video meetings, and that's kind of important as well, because I do think, I am zoomed out at the end of every day. So, and lastly, I will say I'll give props to G2. He came in, from Box, and the combination he and Javid, I think, have really changed the face of WebEx. Now, granted, there's some great lieutenants there, right? Omar and Snora, who I mentioned, Larissa, people like that. So, but they've executed on this mission of making the product much easier to use. And you and I have used WebEx for a long time, and I can say that this is a different product than what we've used.
Absolutely. One other point I want to highlight, and because we're spending a lot of time on this one, but one other point, and I think this applies to a lot of vendors, is Cisco did a lot of effort to reestablish the bundle. They're calling it the collaboration suite. Most people, when they think about the bundle, they think of the Microsoft bundle. You get Office and you get Exchange and you get Teams, of course. But there's other bundles out there, and every organization needs to evaluate what bundle makes the most sense for them. So Cisco, I can't make an exhaustive list here, but Cisco's got hardware, collab, voice, and they're building out CCAS. Google's got their workspace bundle with email and apps, and you can tie in Chromebooks and Android as well. Dialpad, Ring, Cisco have a mobile play with 4G and 5G. That's a different kind of bundle. 8 and Ring and some others are pushing the CCAS and UCAS bundle, which is another thing to think about. And then like Vonage and Avaya are actually pushing the CPAS in their bundles. And so there's different ways of looking at bundles. It's not just one way. And I think that they established that as an important thing to think about. And I've been thinking a lot about that. I think it's an important conversation. So let's get on to something else. So the next story is Zoom and their Zoom phone, which has actually been developing very, very quickly. And they made an announcement this week with Poly, and actually with Yealink too, with the Zoom phone appliance. Now, I got to just say a little bit about Zoom phone. It's been growing dramatically or significantly. It's been expanding globally very quickly. And it's been hard, because I don't use the service. It's been hard to really evaluate how well it's been fitting. But I got kind of impressed the other day. I was talking to one of my Microsoft guys, and this is the kind of guy that no matter what the problem is, you can't fix. The only way to fix it is with Microsoft Teams and UCAS, Microsoft UCAS. And he actually said to me that he was blown away by how much better Zoom was doing in telephony. So no names there, but that got my attention. So I thought I would repeat that. But I want to focus on this new appliance they've announced. They announced it with both Poly and Yealink. And I love talking endpoints. We hardly ever get to talk about endpoints. So I want to talk about endpoints. And this is a Android-based phone. It's actually a CCX phone. So if you're familiar with the Poly line, they basically got the CCX phones for Microsoft, and they got the VVX phones for basic SIP. So why is this a CCX phone? And the answer is because it's an Android-based phone, it's an application phone, and it's basically really similar to the CCX 600. So the 600 and 700 have been out for a while, but the difference between the 600 and 700 is only the 700 has a camera. Now, as you probably know, Zeus, Microsoft does not want cameras on phones. They won't allow it. So there's no IP phone in the Microsoft portfolio that has a camera. You can plug in a USB camera to some of them, but they don't like that up-the-nose shot. But it's more than that. I mean, I was at NEC, for example. They have an appliance phone with a camera on it, and they were using theirs when you came in to make your badge when you do the visitor center, because they're running a badge app on it, and you take your picture and it prints a badge for you. So there's lots of use cases, particularly in small meeting rooms for a camera-based phone. And so the CCX 700 and the 600 are identical except for the phone, but because it has a camera, it can't use it on Microsoft. And so you can only use it right now on Zoom. And it's, of course, running Android app, so it's running the Zoom app, so it makes it an appliance. And I think it's a really interesting device. I like the concept of the appliance, and it just makes it a natural evolution for me. Kind of surprised Neat hasn't introduced an appliance like this, but right now it's just Poly and Yealink.
Yeah, well, I think Neat's got their hands tied. They're not that big a company. Making the video bars and things like that, so they got to get those up.
But they have that Neat frame. They have that Neat frame, which is an Android video device that sits on your desk. Yeah. All it needs is a freaking handset. But okay, your point.
I am hopeful that Zoom, Zoom getting into phone does bring some innovation back to this, because I actually think Microsoft in a lot of ways has stifled the phone market. Their thinking to me is a little bit backwards, and by coming up with the standards that they have for a Microsoft certified phone, they don't really let the vendors be vendors and use their unique capabilities. So, Poly's got a ton of features built into their phone. Like we talked about noise block, even like with their eagle eye cameras and things like that, for speaker tracking, but they've dumbed everything down. So the functionality in a Poly Teams room is the same as a Crestron Teams room, which is the same as a Logi Team room. So then the only thing that differentiates them is paint and price. And I do think if you're a customer and you're willing to invest the money in Poly, you should get more features than you get in Logi, right? But Microsoft doesn't really approach it that way. And so I think in a lot of ways, Microsoft has hurt phone innovation because they've just told the vendors, here's what to build. And so I think with Zoom being in it, I think Zoom's a lot more customer and user friendly than Microsoft is. And so I'm hoping Zoom, by bringing in all these third-party phones is actually going to create another wave of innovation. So, but you covered the phones pretty well. So this week, Dave, also at the beginning of the week, Apple held its Worldwide Developer Conference, and this is where all the Apple Apple fans wait with bated breath to see what's new, and sometimes they disappoint, and sometimes they don't. And there's often not a lot of news in there for the communications audience, but this time there was a couple of pieces. One was that FaceTime now actually runs in a browser, and so you can use it on other devices. I know you're going to talk about that. The feature that I really liked, though, was the thing called live text. And, we've talked about this before, how the only thing that hasn't been digitized in the world of collaboration is the whiteboard. And so people still write on traditional whiteboards. They take pictures of traditional whiteboards. They send them around, and then they got to, copy information off them. With live text, you can actually take a picture of a whiteboard. And the demo they showed was you could actually cut and paste the text off the picture and paste it into an email, paste it into a Word document. You could click to dial right from it if you take a picture of a billboard. And so they've built some AI-based OCR capabilities into it so they can convert any image into text. And they've actually made the search capabilities. I mean, you could actually search on a certain phrase in all your photos. So if you went to, I know you just came back from Vegas, and let's say you took a picture of the MGM's phone number and you wanted to find that, you could search MGM and it would find that for you. So that was pretty cool. I thought Apple did a nice job at that. And while that's not really directed to enterprise communications, I think that gives you a sense of where this could go. I know there's a couple of companies like Captivo and things doing like that, but to me, the digitization of the whiteboard and of static content like that is still sorely lacking in our industry.
Well, I don't pay a lot of attention to the developer conference at Apple because I'm not an Apple person. And however, they did make some news that they did make an announcement that really does interfere with or cross into our space, which is that FaceTime is becoming a web app. Now, what they actually said was that it'll work with Windows and Android, but presumably it'll work with Linux and Chromebooks as well. And it's just 2 months ago during the Apple Epic trial, which is of course in a break right now. Epic argued that Apple locks its customers into the ecosystem with their devices. And they were using iMessage as the example, and they gave some evidence of that conversation around iMessage. And we learned it was true. I mean, they had an internal conversation that iMessage is restricted so that people won't switch to Android devices. So back up 11 years ago when Steve Jobs himself launched FaceTime, he promised it would be an open industry standard. However, this whole time it's been locked to Apple devices, and this is why I can't talk to my brother. He's on Apple, I'm not, and we can't talk. So they just announced that they're going to open this up, and I'm really excited about this, and I think it's actually going to have probably the biggest impact to Facebook, which isn't may not be intuitive to a lot of people, but WhatsApp is one of the most popular channels going into the contact center. And so I have a feeling that Apple is going to give a lot of pressure to WhatsApp about the most common way to reach a business via the contact center via FaceTime. So that's it for this week on Real Time Recorded. Thanks for watching. Longer episode than usual, but so much good stuff.